to join in the 2 lectures before today. I take this opportunity to welcome you all and to appreciate, especially the facilitators who have found time to participate in this. Today, I join in first also to support this and also to make an announcement, but the lecture is by Dr. Camillus from the University of, from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Will introduce himself when he starts. So I only borrowed a few minutes of his time to just make an announcement, and this regards a very important aspect of your work. I know that much of this is happening through self-study and supplemented by the guest lectures, but there is a very special component, which is project work or field work that requires that you work in groups and take on projects. We had requested that you submit topics, and I know that we have a number of topics they contributed largely from University of Ghana. We also have a contribution from Kenya Methodist University, and also I think recently from the University of Dar es Salaam. So since these are projects that we can work, depending on context, but we can work collaboratively across institutions, we can still pick from the topics. I'm sure that our universities are located in different contexts, some in the urban, so you'll see topics that are related to urban settings and others in the rural settings. So I'm sure that we can all fit in. And I wanted to let you know that this group work is not just going to be limited to groups within your own institutions. We want to have this group work across so that to enhance the interaction and the international aspect of collaboration, would like for you to pick topics. And if you pick a topic, for instance, related I'm just giving an example. If you're working with farmers, for example, in Nigeria, there could be someone else who's also looking at the impacts of climate change on farming in Kenya or in Zambia. If you are all interested in this, in a similar topic, you can work as groups now involving you as students in a university in Nigeria, those students in a university in Kenya, and the students in a university in Zambia. You work as a group. What you'll do is that you'll go to your communities in Nigeria, in Kenya, and in Zambia, collect data, but of course there would be similarities and comparisons to make across the 3 countries. I'm giving an example. So don't take it as a project that is going to involve your colleagues within your university, but you can have a project that involves colleagues, and we encourage this. You can pick a topic that involves colleagues in another country or in other countries, which then will enhance the experience. So you're free to pick these topics. I'm sure that these were shared with you and you've had a chance, hopefully, to look through them. I'm just going to read through in case you have not had a chance to read through. And after this, you give us a topic that you choose. Never mind if it's reading Dar es Salaam or it's reading Kenya or it's reading Ghana, it's because of those who contributed the topics. But if the topic is still relevant to you, you can pick it. And when you're doing the project work, of course, that will be in your context. So you can pick a topic and let us know so that then we can group according to the topics that you have picked. If it were not going to eat a lot of time into this classwork, we would do it now, but we just want to introduce you to it, to let you know that topics have been suggested and the modalities of working on these projects, that you'll work in groups across institutions. So after this, and I really encourage you that after this class, you send to Mwangi, who is using the email, the support at CESDA, you send your preferred topic. Once you send your preferred topics, then we will group you and bring you together as groups in a different setting to agree on how to move forward with that. So I don't know if any one of you has a question. Feel free to ask a question for clarification, because we really want to move fast with this and hopefully to set up the field work from next week. Yes, Alex?
I want to ask where we send the the topics to. I want to find out where we can send our topics to.
Okay, you sent to support@CESDA. Mwangi, you can type the email here, but I think you do receive emails from support@cestafrica.org. Do you? Have you been receiving emails through that? Yes, that's the one you respond to. That's the email you respond to with your preferred topic, and then we will group you accordingly.
Email from them.
Yes. But Mwangi, you can also type the email.
Receive email.
Yes.
From the chat.
Mwangi, allow me to share the screen to just highlight the topics that have been shared and let the students start. Okay, so I guess I'm now allowed to share. I don't know why this is bringing me up to this. Do you see the fieldwork topics now?
Yes.
Okay. So these topics were shared with you, I think, in two sets of lists, but I've now combined them. And just to go through them quickly and then let you pick on this, because we really want you to do this quickly enough. We form the groups and set off for fieldwork as soon as the beginning of next week. So the first question that was proposed is navigating climate change impacts on blue economy, challenges and adaptation strategies in coastal fishing communities. So if this is a topic of interest and it's in close proximity to your institution, please suggest. And also as a guideline, because of the time limit that we have, we may not be able to spread too far from our institution. So pick a topic that you will be able to handle together with your work, because we recognize you're also enrolled in other programs, depending on your interest, but also considering the distance to your field work site. The other is critical assessment of climate change impact on building the resilience in a particular country. In this case, you pick your country. Assessing climate change impacts on fishermen. Again, assessing the health impacts of extreme heat on school children in poor urban communities. Examining the significance of green infrastructure in mitigating urban heat. Endogenous food adaptation strategies in a particular town. So you can pick your town if you're interested in food adaptation strategies. Number 7, we have assessing the impacts of climate change, coastal communities. Again, many of these are related to coastal communities because of the institution that proposed this. Assessing the impact of rising temperatures on livelihoods in particular town. Again, coastal waste audit and analysis in learning institutions and ways to improve management. So again, this can be in schools or in universities. Disaster risk management, assessment, and community awareness of climate change, adaptation, and mitigation. This, I think, can fit any context. Number 11, we have sustainable farming practices, organic farming, agroforestry, conservation agriculture for climate rehabilitation. If you're interested in agriculture, you can pick this. Renewable energy use of waste to generate biofuel among the local communities to reduce carbon emissions. Number 13 in that first list is generation of animal feed and organic fertilizers from waste using black soldier flies. So that's the first set you received, and I think today you did receive another set. One of the questions there is climate change and human health, investigating the impacts of extreme weather effects on public health in Dar es Salaam. But again, as I said, you can contextualize this to your city or town. Promoting waste management for climate change mitigation. Impacts of climate change on urban sanitation. The economic costs of climate change on agriculture, again, another on agriculture or aquaculture, community resilience to climate change, urbanization and climate change. I don't know why that has disappeared. Okay. Promotion or promoting waste management. I don't know. Now I've lost the question I was in. Community resilience to climate change, urbanization and climate change, challenges for Tanzanian cities. This can be any city in any country. Challenges in global climate governance. Are international policies effective for developing nations? This I'm not sure how it will work in terms of project work. The impacts of climate change on livelihoods and economic sustainability or stability. Impacts of climate change on seaweed farming in Zanzibar. The role of climate change in social disruptions and migration, as well as climate change and political stability. So these are the questions we have for now. And because we have not too much time to stretch and to get very many questions, we want to plan to fit within this. I'm sure that all of us can fit within this if we contextualize the questions and we form groups. So you can be 2, 3 people from your university and you can team up with another 2, 3 from other universities, but do give us your do give us your questions, your suggestions. Looks like I stopped sharing anyway. Do give us your suggestions and we will then form groups. And I think from early next week, our conversation should be, when are we going to the field? Who are you working with, and who is supporting you through that? So with that, allow me to stop here to allow the guest lecture to begin. If you have any questions, please email, or at the end of the lecture, you might want to still raise this. We'll still be here to respond to that, and also through email. But most importantly, please choose a topic and let us start off our fieldwork from Monday next week. Thank you, and over to you, Camillus. Most welcome for the lecture.
All right, thank you so much, Prof, for letting us know how the projects are expected to be carried out. So I'll also take over from where Prof just ended. Let me see if I can share my presentation. All right, let me begin by welcoming all of you to this third lecture of our Acclimatis project. I want to believe that we have a representation from all the participating universities. So from wherever you are connecting from across Africa, I welcome you once again. I want to believe that I have students from, unfortunately, we don't seem to have everybody present, but I think currently when I check, we have about close to about 50 of you currently in this lecture. So if we are connecting from Kenyatta University, from the University for Development Studies, from Kisii University, University of Ghana, University of Nairobi, we have Emmanuel Alayande University of Education, University of Dar es Salaam, we have Kenya Methodist University and here in Ghana. I welcome all of you. Today we are a topic that is going to let each and every one of you know how you can also climate change. But before I start, let me find out from you, what do you think are the main differences between mitigation and adaptation? Because that is exactly what we are going to be talking about today. We are going to be hearing about mitigation, is going to be adaptation. So let me find out from you, what do you think is the difference between the two? I want to believe that this is not the very first time you are hearing about climate change, and this is not the first time you are hearing about mitigation and adaptation. The two words look alike. Some believe they can be used interchangeably. Yes, Alex.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. I think that the adaptation has to do with how you try to situate yourself in the situation, to try to manage the situation. Even though the climate is changing, how then do you manage it? What are some of the mechanisms you are putting in place? So what are some of the shock mechanisms you are putting in place to make sure that even though the climate is changing, but you will still be able to manage it? That is what I understand by the adaptation. But the mitigation has to do with trying to put measures in place so that in the near future, the consequences or the effects of climate change are then reduced, if not eliminated automatically, but it's rather reduced. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Alex.
I also want to say that mitigation is the short-term measures put in place, and then adaptation is the long-term measures that is put in place. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nana Kesua. I can, Margaret.
Thank you. When you talk about climate mitigation, we talk about how to fix the sources to tackle the root causes. But when we talk about climate adaptation, is how you address the immediate effect and how to respond to the climate change. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let me pick the last one. Yes, I wanted to pick let me pick the last one, Fred.
Okay, so what I want to say is mitigation is like reducing, and then adaptation is just like adjusting to a situation.
Okay, so let's end it here. You are all right. And as we proceed, you'll begin to know whether what you said is right or is not right. Okay. So today, as I told you, we are actually going to be talking about mitigation and adaptation. You see, whether we like it or not, climate change, we are experiencing a climate change. And a climate change affects all of us, irrespective of wherever it is that you are coming from. Whether it doesn't matter what program you have come to the university to learn. Climate change is here with us, and everybody is affected by it. So the best we can do is to find a way of either stopping it or still trying to live with it. So no matter where we live or what we study, it affects so many things about our life. For instance, climate change affects our water. It affects our health. It affects our economies. If we don't find solutions to addressing climate change, a time will come that we will even struggle to have water to do whatever is it that we want to do. You agree with me that water is very, very important. It affects our health, and then whatever is it that we do. So today, I want us to appreciate whatever is it that is happening, to give you some kind of a basic knowledge of what is happening, how the climate change that we are all experiencing today can be reduced. And then if it is also happening, how can we also live with it? So basically, just like some of the contributions that came from some of you, there are things that we can do because climate change itself is caused by certain things. Is it possible that we can stop those things? Or is it possible that we can reduce them? And when you are looking at it from this angle, then we are thinking about mitigation. But if you are also thinking about still trying to come out with strategies to still be able to live with it, then we may be talking about adaptation. So normally, when it comes to mitigation, we are talking about how we can reduce the causes. And if we can reduce the causes, then it becomes necessary that we find a way of understanding, of knowing what the causes are, trying to understand what the causes are before we can take steps to stop them. Now, when it comes to adapting to it, then we are thinking about how we can adjust ourselves or protect ourselves, because some of the things that we are experiencing are such that whether we like it or not, it has already happened. And for that matter, it becomes necessary that we find a way of still living with it. So that is the reason why we have met here this particular afternoon. And that has also been the main objective behind this Acclimatis program. Because of the havoc that climate change is presenting to us. That is why we want every African university student to have some knowledge of climate change and, of course, the sustainable development goals, so that in our own small way, wherever we find ourselves from across the continent, is there anything that I can do? Is there anything that you can also do to contribute to helping to reduce the climate change problem? And let me indicate that you are the future leaders of the continent. And what we think in this particular project is that if we are able to let you know what you can do, if we're able to understand these things, then it means that as you go through your university education, even before you complete, you will be you will start doing some of these things, so that after you have completed and then you are working, irrespective of wherever is it that you are working, at the end of the day, you know what to do at the workplace, wherever you find yourself, to be able to help address climate change. Now, if you look at this particular, I decided to put this particular graph here from the an article I put from the World Meteorological Organization. It is telling us how some variables have changed over the period. So in this particular graph, you see that we have, it's telling us how temperature, for instance, has changed over the period. If you look at, we have the years on the horizontal axis. So starting from the 1900s all the way to where we find ourselves now, this particular century within which we find ourselves up to the 2020s. If you look at the movement of the graph, you see that there's some kind of trend that over the years, temperature has been increasing. And that is what we refer to as climate change. Basically, when we talk about climate change, we are talking about a very long-term change in these climatic variables. And basically, we are talking about temperature, we are talking about rainfall, we are talking about wind and what have you. But I'm using this particular graph as an example. I'm using temperature here as an example. So you see that in the 1900s, temperature was quite low. But over time, you realize that the average temperature within the continent keeps going up. And that is why we in Africa here need to be concerned about what is happening. Because if we don't find a way of solving this particular problem, then that means that we will continue to suffer the problems that it presents to us at the end of the day. So basically, when we talk about climate change, for us to be able to delve into this particular thing, it's important for us to understand what really climate change is about. Sometimes we talk about climate change, sometimes we talk about climate variability. For climate change, we are basically talking about the long-term changes in the variables as I talked about. And when the change has occurred, reversing it becomes very, very difficult because we have already destroyed certain things that will have stopped it. And if you look at where we belong in Africa, geographically, we are not even well positioned to be able to get ourselves protected from some of these things we are experiencing. So basically, we are talking about long-term changes in temperature, in rainfall, and wind patterns, largely caused by human activities. And that is where you and I come in. If the climate change we are experiencing is as a result of human activities, then it means that if we are able to identify these human activities, and then we are able to modify them or adjust them in a certain way, then we should be able to contribute to managing climate change. Basically, when we talk about human activities, in most cases, we are basically talking about the burning of fossil fuels. And that has been the greatest cause of climate change. If you look at the temperatures that we are experiencing today, it's different from the kind of temperature our forefathers were experiencing in those days. If you look at even the way rainfall has been very erratic these days. These days, farmers struggle to even know when to start their production. Because before now, a particular farmer will know that the rains will come maybe in this particular month. So if I want to plan my farm activities, I can wait and then start from this particular point and then delve into it. But because of climate change, sometimes farmers will plan, and at the end of the day, the time when they expect the rains will not come. So burning of fossil fuels has become a very serious cause of climate change. And that is why if we want to be talking about adaptation strategies, we should be thinking about alternatives to use of fossil fuels. And basically, when we talk about fossil fuels, we are talking about burning of coal, the petroleum that we use, the kind of oil that we use in our cars, in our machines, the gas we use. These are all fossil fuels. So in talking about helping to address the challenges of climate change, is it possible that we can come out with alternatives to use of these things that I have mentioned? Another serious one has to do with the cutting down of trees. So these are things that we see every day. You move on our streets from across Africa in our cities. You see so many cars that are moving on our roads. They are all burning fuels. And you take about 90% of the cars that we see on our roads are using fossil fuels. They are using petrol. And the burning of these fuels release certain gases that go into the atmosphere. And normally when the sun has hit the ground, at the end of the day, the heat is expected to be reflected back. But in the course of the heat being reflected back, it gets to a point and then it gets trapped because of the presence of certain obnoxious gases in the atmosphere. And these gases are as a result of these fossil fuels. So is it possible that something can be done to address this particular situation? So you see that for a very long time, the way we saw temperature is not like the way we see it today. And it doesn't look like it's going to go back. And that is why the best we can do now is to make sure that we are not adding to the problem, but we are finding a way of either reducing or stopping it or adapting or adjusting ourselves to it. So this is what we call climate change. I want to believe that you have all been witnesses of the fact that sometimes the weather gets so warm to the extent that you become so uncomfortable that you cannot even live in your house. You put on the fan and still the place is warm. You put on the air condition, the place is warm. Even the fan and the air condition you are using is also adding to the climate change. Because at the end of the day, your source of electricity is either using a generator, which is also using fuel, or you are using a hydroelectric power source, which is also using some fuel. I want to believe that you have all been witnesses of the fact that a lot of people all over the world are experiencing floods. The time you expect the rain will not come. And when the rain too is coming, it comes in huge quantities, sometimes destroying so many lives and properties. So I'm using this this particular graph to let you know what has happened over the period. And you can see that it has been an upward or an increasing trend. And if between the 1900s and now, temperature continues to increase. And if you look at the trend, if it has been an increasing trend, then it means that if we don't do something about it, then it means that in about 10 years, 50 years to come, things will be worse. And this is coming from the World Meteorological Organization. This is a study that they did recently about Africa. And then they realized that the time has come for African countries to really do something about the climate change menace. Now, the question we also need to ask ourselves is, why should we as Africans even care? Why should we care about this climate change? It is very important that we care about climate change because it's causing a lot of havoc on the continent. For instance, it is causing a lot of drought because of climate change. Some places that were noted for receiving very good rains are no longer receiving the rains. They are now experiencing drought. And you and I agree with me that in the occurrence of drought, that means agricultural activities become a problem. In fact, I will use Ghana here, where I'm connecting from, as an example. Last year, so many farmers had to lose a lot because they planted the maize, they planted the crops, they had a plan thinking that at the end of the day, the rains were going to come to allow the crops to do well. But unfortunately, the rains did not come. People who had gone into about 800 to 1,000 acres of maize had to lose everything, to the extent that the government of Ghana had to go into the consolidated fund, the contingency fund, to get some money for these farmers. So drought is a very serious problem that we are experiencing as a result of climate change. Floods. I'm sure from wherever is it that you are connecting from in the cities, sometimes you hear some cities have flooded. And anytime it's going to rain, the people living in such communities will start panicking because they don't know what is going to happen. So, and this is the reason why as Africans, we need to be mindful of it. Heat waves. I was talking about heat. Sometimes the heat can be so high that no amount of air conditioning you put on, no amount of electric fan you put on is going to bring the heat down. And all these are as a result of climate change. And for that matter, it's very important for us to be worried. I was talking about the drought. So if we are not getting the rains and there's drought, it means at the end of the day, there's going to be poor harvest. And if there's poor harvest, then the net effect is that at the end of the day, food security is going to be affected. You know how food is very, very important. If food security is affected, then it means as a continent, we have a problem. And most of these farmers are going to be poor at the end of the day. In Africa, most African countries are developing countries, and a chunk of our populations are employed in the agricultural sector. So if close to over 60, 70% of the population is employed in agric, and then they are planting their crops and then their crops are not doing well, then it means at the end of the day, a lot of them are going to be poor. And that is going to bring that is going to worsen the poverty problem that we are already experiencing in the country. In fact, the World Meteorological Organization has estimated that about 118 million extremely poor people are likely going to be exposed by these climate events that I just talked about. Already, the continent is taking steps to help alleviate poverty in so many countries on the continent. And if climate change is also bringing its problems, then it means that is also going to be some kind of added responsibility to to what we are trying to do to address this particular problem. Now, let me also indicate that, let you know that these climate events that I'm talking about, so many African countries have already experienced them. Now, if you look at this particular graph that I'm showing you here, telling you the number of countries that have experienced the various climate events, you see we have about almost 50 countries in Africa experiencing floods. Floods have become a perennial problem, a serious problem on the African continent. Normally in the rainy season, because of the location of Africa, because of the proximity of Africa to the equator, you realize that most of our cities are normally experiencing floods. So anytime it's going to rain, then people living there will be thinking. People will start panicking because they don't know what is likely going to happen. So we have about 50 people, close to about 50 countries experiencing floods every day. We have about 40 people experiencing drought. About 40 countries experiencing drought. We have about 39 countries experiencing extreme temperature. Temperatures are getting so high that sometimes even you put water in a water tank, you just go to the tap, you want to get some water, and then you see that the water is very warm. You see, changes in precipitation patterns. When I talk about precipitation, I'm talking about rainfall, I'm talking about snow, I'm talking about dew, anything that comes as a result of, condensation of evaporated gases. So you see the variation in precipitation. Farmers don't even know when the rains are coming. Sometimes you will just be there and then you just see the rain coming. There are some countries that are also experiencing a high rise in sea levels. Sea levels are rising, and then communities along the coast are getting flooded. In some countries in Africa, especially communities along the coast, there are projects to construct what we call sea defense to help dwellers of such places. It is very common to see a lot of people in Africa experiencing storms. I just want you to understand that before now, these things were not there. Fires, dust. Sometimes you go somewhere and then you just realize that there is dust in the atmosphere. So these are some of the problems that climate change presents to us. And if we are going to be talking about how to mitigate climate change, how to adapt to climate change, then we should be thinking about this. What is it that we as the future leaders of Africa, what is it that we can do to help address this particular situation? Before we even get into it, I want you to be thinking about it. It is even believed that if I have to send you back to agriculture, it is believed that some diseases and pests of certain crops have come into existence because of climate change. Because some of these, if we are talking about diseases, then we are talking about microorganisms. Some of these microorganisms thrive under certain high levels of temperature. There are some pests that have become very common because of rainfall variability. So pest and disease has also become one of the problems that climate change is presenting to us. So if you and I don't take steps, if we don't find a way of taking steps to address these things that we are talking about, then nobody knows what is going to happen to us in 10 years' time. I showed you the trend, and you see that it is something, it has been a continuum. What then is mitigation? That was the first question I started with. And some of you were able to, share your views, your opinions on it. Of course, most of the things you said are right. So like some of you already indicated, when we talk about mitigation, in fact, these two words are very, very important. And as people that we are training to go out into the world to work towards contributing to the climate change agenda, it is important you try to understand these, that even those, sometimes they can be used interchangeably, and yet there are differences. So when we talk about mitigation, we are talking about reducing or stopping the things that cause climate change. Reducing or stopping the things that cause climate change. That is what we call mitigation. So we always want you to think of mitigation as I just want you to look at it, think of it like stopping the fire before it burns the house. So there's you see that the house is there, and then the fire is there. You see, the house is there, the fire is there. You know that if care is not taken, this fire is going to burn the house. So the best thing for you to do is to do what? Is to find a way of quenching the fire. So stopping the fire before it burns the house. So that is what mitigation is. What can we do to ensure that climate change doesn't happen at all? How can we find a way of reducing it or stopping it altogether? That is what we call mitigation. And if you are stopping it, what is it that you are stopping? You are stopping the things that cause climate change. And that means that for you to be able to do this, it also becomes necessary that you understand the things that cause climate change. And then the number one thing that causes a climate change is greenhouse gas emissions. Emission of greenhouse gases. And when we talk about these greenhouse gases, what are they? We are talking about carbon dioxide. Any human activity that generates carbon dioxide, is it possible you can find a way of stopping it? Any human activity that generates methane, can we stop? The question is, what are some of the activities that generate carbon dioxide? Burning of fossil fuels, as I told you. Burning of petrol. The question is, whether we like it or not, we will continue to drive our cars. We will continue to use our cars. So carbon dioxide is normally generated as a result of the burning of fossil fuels. So any machine that uses petrol, at the end of the day, combustion will have to take place. And carbon dioxide is a product of what? This combustion. So the question is it possible we can find a way of not using the petrol? This is how you should be thinking about the mitigation. Now, we also have methane. Methane is normally generated by, especially in animal farms. If you enter any poultry farm, if you enter a kraal where cattle are reared, can do about this. so that this will no longer be generated, because once the gas is generated, it gets into the atmosphere.
Hey, doctor, we've lost you. Hello, Camillus. Hello, Dr. Camillus, we have lost you. Okay, as we wait for doctor to join, hoping all of you are learning well on the Acclimatize platform. By now, we should be around module 4. You've done the assignments and all that. Nice. Dr. Camillus is back. Let's give him a minute so that he can continue presenting.
All right, sorry, my network, I had a challenge with my network, but thank God I'm back. All right, so let's continue from where we ended. So I was talking about nitrous oxide, which is as a result of the use of fertilizers by our farmers. Is there any alternative to using these inorganic fertilizers? This is how we should be thinking about the mitigation approaches. And then we also have what we call fluorinated gases that are normally used in our refrigerators and the rest. So the fridges that we use also produce some obnoxious gases into the atmosphere that at the end of the day, that also contribute to climate change. If you enter our factories, mining and construct, they also release a lot of greenhouse gases because our factories use petrol. Our mining activities use petrol. If you go to our industries, so is it possible that we can, come out with some suggestions instead of using the petrol? Is there anything that can be used to prevent it? Then I was talking about our cars, our trucks. They all release, carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Now, another very important cause has to do with deforestation, cutting down of the trees. The reason is that the trees are able to absorb, the carbon dioxide that is produced. So if we are cutting down our trees, then it means that at the end of the day, the carbon dioxide that is released into the atmosphere as a result of just a minute, please. All right, sorry for the interruption. All right, so I was talking about deforestation, and we are talking about the cutting down of the trees. Even if we are using the petrol, and then the petrol are producing the obnoxious gases into the atmosphere, is it possible that if we are able to grow trees at the end of the day, because these trees use carbon dioxide in photosynthesis, they help to absorb some of these gases, and that will also contribute to mitigation. So basically, that is what mitigation is all about. It's about how we can reduce how we can reduce the things that cause climate change, or how can we stop the things that cause climate change. Good. So how can we, what can we do? What can you and I do? I believe that you and I, from wherever we are, there's something that we can do to help address this climate change menace. So how can we mitigate climate change? So before we go into it, let me ask you, what do you think can be done? Any suggestion on what you think from what I've told you so far? Let me pick 1, 2, 3 of you. Yes, boy, Charles.
Yes, please. Manufacturing of electric vehicles.
Okay, good. So somebody is talking about instead of using petrol cars, and I think it's something that has come out. So some countries have decided to go into importing only electric cars. The reason is that it's believed that these electric cars will not be using petrol. And because of that, they are not going to burn any fossil fuel and no carbon dioxide or any obnoxious, no greenhouse gas is going to be produced into the atmosphere. So most of these cars, they basically use energy that is clean. Stacy. Stacy, your hand is up.
Yeah, I think you've said a point about fertilizers releasing nitrogen oxide. So I think there we can opt for the use of biofertilizers, like the nitrogen fixing biofertilizers, like the rhizobium. And also there are bacteria that break down or solubilize the phosphates. So we can use them to break down the insoluble phosphates, making them available to plants as fertilizers.
All right, thank you. So she is coming from the angle of the use of the continuous use of inorganic fertilizers that releases nitrous oxides into the atmosphere. So she is thinking that we should resort to using biofertilizers. If we are talking about biofertilizers, then we are talking about fertilizers of natural origin. So that is very good. Fabian. Fabian.
Yes. Hello, sir.
All right. Yes. Your hand is up.
So there is a point that you have talked about the cars, trucks, ships, and planes that burns gasoline and diesel that release the greenhouse gases. So I think one of the mitigation that you can impose on these is working in line with the government to implement certain pricing on carbon releasing. Like, for example, the factories. There should be a law that or a policy that restricts people from releasing a lot of carbon. That is one way that we can mitigate that. And also another point on deforestation, we can also implement the policy of afforestation, whereby we plant many trees. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. So let's continue. Thank you so much, Fabian. That is a very important contribution from him. I'll come to the rest of you. I'll come to you later. So he is talking about the need for policies to ensure that these factories that are releasing some of these gases, normally what governments can do is to give maybe factories or institutions certain quotas that yes, you can release, but you cannot release maybe beyond this particular quantity. You cannot put this particular quantity of effluent onto the atmosphere. These days, we talk about what we call carbon credits, where firms, sometimes some firms are able to, are given a certain quantity of carbon dioxide that they can emit into the atmosphere. It has even become a business, such that if I am a firm and then I am given a certain quantity to emit, and then I am unable to emit that from my firm, or if I'm able to economize it in such a way that at the end of the day, if I'm not emitting that, then I can sell it to you. You want to emit more. So we call it carbon credits. It's something that I want you to read about. So policies are very, very important. So all that you said are right. Some of you talked about what afforestation, planting of the trees. So if we are talking about planting of the trees, it's either we are talking about afforestation or reforestation. So if it is afforestation, then it means that there were no trees, and you are now going to plant what trees in an area where there are no trees. If it is reforestation, then it means that the plants were there, something happened, and then all the plants were lost. All the plants were cut down. These days, you come to Ghana here, and Galamsey illegal mining activities have been on the increase. We are destroying our forest because of gold. So if we are doing all these things, then it means at the end of the day, we are contributing a lot to climate change, because the trees that are going to absorb the carbon dioxide, we are cutting them down. So one thing we can do is to go into reforestation. And then we also have, some of you were also talking about, instead of using the petrol cars, we should go into, the use of electric vehicles. You were talking about renewable energy. You see, some of these cars use the sun's energy. They use solar energy. Solar energy, at the end of the day, is converted into whatever energy that is required for the car to be able to move. So instead of using these petrols, one of the things we can also do is the use of the solar panels. Of course, getting energy from solar panel can be very, very expensive, but it's some kind of clean energy. Instead of relying on, let's say, electricity from hydroelectric power, because at the end of the day, in generating the hydroelectric power, we'll be using petrol, and that is also going to contribute to releasing the greenhouse gases. So solar panels are very good. That is something that we can go into. And also the use of wind turbines, that is also able to generate electrical energy, where after spinning up to a certain level, at the end of the day, some electrical energy is generated. That is also very, very important. So renewable energy has become a very important mitigation measure that countries, now so many countries, are preaching the use of these energy sources. Then one of you also talked about bioenergy. Bioenergy, where we are talking about energy from natural sources. There are certain plants that you can even get electrical energy from. An example is what we call jatropha. So these are some of the things that we can use instead of using a hydroelectric energy power source that relies on petrol and other fossil fuels. So all these things that we are talking about at the end of the day go a long way to reduce our usage. Of course, we cannot completely stop using the fossil fuels, but we can find a way of reducing it. It will take time before a particular country can be using only renewable energy, but that is possible. Another thing we can also do as a mitigation measure has to do with using less energy in our homes. You see, when you are not when I talk about using less energy, if you look at the light in your house, if you know that it is possible not to use the light, you put it off. Because if you don't put it off and you are using it, it means at the end of the day, you will think that you are the one going to pay the bill. And sometimes I ask myself, will you do that in your own home where you are paying the bills? So when you are using less energy, you are also contributing to, mitigating climate change. And then another thing you can also do is to use these energy-saving bulbs and appliances. These days, we have a lot of energy-saving appliances and bulbs. And I think that some countries have even gone to the extent of ensuring that before any electrical appliance is imported into the country, it has to be an energy-saving thing. That is also part of the mitigation approaches. So from wherever you are connecting from, if you have not been putting your lights off, it's something that you should start doing. And even when you want to build your house, our architecturers should, design our buildings in such a way that at the end of the day, there will be enough windows such that there will be no need for electric bulbs to be used during the daytime so that we can only use them in the night. You go to some places, they build a house in such a way that even during the daytime, you have to put the lights on. That is not the best. Another mitigation measure we can also think of has to do with reducing waste and recycling. So the reason is that if we are able to reduce waste, then it means that the quantity of waste that we have in our landfills will be very, very low. Normally, when you go to our landfills where we normally throw our waste away, at the end of the day, we end up burning them. When you burn them, you contribute to the quantity of methane in the atmosphere, the quantity of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And these gases are also greenhouse gases. So one of the things that we can do is for us to think of recycling some of our waste. Can we turn them into other usable things, other beneficial products? And I think now a lot of countries these days, I see trucks, as you can see in this particular picture, you see trucks loaded with so many plastics. And you ask them what they are going to do with it, they tell you they are going to recycle them into a new product, so that at the end of the day, there will be no need. So that at the end of the day, there will be no need for, for us to go and then dump anything anywhere. And at the end of the day, we have to, burn it. So I put it here that less waste in our landfills is equals to less emissions. The more you put a lot of waste, in the olden days, you go to the landfill and then there are so many things over there. What we are saying is that let us find a way of reducing them and think about recycling them into something new. So that has been for mitigation. What then is adaptation? You see, if we are talking about adaptation, then we are talking about adjusting our lives and practices to protect ourselves from the effects of climate change. Adaptation normally happens when we now appreciate the fact that whether we like it or not, climate change is here with us. We are already experiencing it. If you look at the graph that I showed you earlier, the temperature, there was an increasing trend of the temperature. And that means that whether we like it or not, from today onwards, the temperature is going to increase. We are going to continue to experience the rainfall variability. We are going to continue to experience the floods. So how do we live? We still have to live. How do we protect ourselves? How do we adjust to our experiences? That is what we call adaptation. So think of adaptation like building a very strong house. Because you know, at the end of the day, the strong winds are going to come. The storms are going to come. So how do you withstand the storm? That is where adaptation actually comes in. One of the first things I want us to talk about has to do with the use of climate-smart agricultural practices. I've put a lot of things here because you know, agriculture is very, very important because of food security. So it's important that we take steps, because as I told you earlier on, climate change is affecting agriculture. It's reducing productivity. It is making farmers poor. Farmers are unable to get what they expect because of climate change. So is there anything that we expect these farmers to do? The first one has to do with conservation agriculture. And basically, I've given some examples here. We have what we call minimum or no tillage. It's either we are preaching that don't till the land at all. Don't plow the land. When I talk about tillage, I'm talking about, let's say, if you may like, plowing the land. So don't plow the land. The reason is that when you plow the land, you affect the soil structure. And when the soil structure is affected, it affects even the soil's water retention ability. As soon as it rains and then water lands on it, it quickly, you know, percolates and then goes down beyond the reach of, you know, the root of plants. We call it leaching. Agriculturists call it what? Leaching. So as much as possible, if it is possible, what we are saying is that don't till the land, because when you do that, it affects the soil structure. But we are encouraging that instead of tilling the land, rather resort to using mulching. Mulching, where you cover the surface of the soil with dry leaves. And that is going to, you know, cool the soil surface so that the place will not be that dried. One of the things you can also do has to do with crop rotation. You plant one crop this year on this particular land, the following year, you plant a different crop, and then what have you. So soil conservation is very, very important that our farmers can do. Whether they like it or not, climate change is here with us. And the best we can do is to find a way of living with it. Another one has to do with agroforestry, where we are able to integrate trees into our crops. So you plant your cashew, you are planting your maize, but in the course of planting the maize, maybe you put cashew in it, or you put cocoa in it. Of course, a time is going to come where the tree is going to form some canopy that is going to, you know, prevent you from planting the maize again. But by planting these trees, at the end of the day, they will help absorb the greenhouse gases. And then farmers should also think about, I am doing this because food security is very, very important. Farmers should also be mindful of how they can, sometimes the effect of climate change is going to be drought. And if there's drought and then it is not raining, then we should find an alternative. And an alternative can be the integration of, you know, irrigation, use of drip irrigation in our farms. And also devising strategy in water, we store it so that in periods when it is not raining, we can use this particular water. Farmers may also consider planting what we call drought-resistant varieties. There are certain varieties of certain crops if you take maize, for instance, maize has so many varieties. Some of the varieties are drought resistant. In other words, they do well even when there is drought. So we are encouraging our farmers to also consider some of these varieties. We are also encouraging them to, consider planting early maturing crop varieties. If it is, sometimes the crop is going to be affected by climate change because the plant has to be on the land for a very long time before you get the yield from it. But if it is something that matures very early, you realize that at the end of the day, by the time the rain stop coming, you will have gotten your yield. We are also telling our farmers to bring in what we call integrated pest management. And normally when we talk about integrated pest management, most of our farmers have been using, They basically use pesticides to control pests. But what we are saying is that these pesticides are not environmentally friendly. So, because when you use the pesticides, even though you want to kill these pests, sometimes you end up also killing beneficial pests. Some of the pests are beneficial because some of them can be used as predators to destroy some other pests. So what we are saying is that instead of using just pesticides, also resort to using maybe some pests that you think can predate on other pests that can eat other pests. You can introduce some cockroaches in the farm that can also feed on other pests that are destroying your crop. And that is what we call biological control or natural predators. We are also encouraging our farmers, like some of you suggested or contributed, to shift from using inorganic to organic fertilizers or bio fertilizers. So when I talk, the reason is that using the inorganic fertilizers will release nitrous oxide, which is a greenhouse gas, as I told you earlier on. So farmers should consider using, let's say, compost, manure, and green manure. These are all from natural sources that are considered environmentally friendly. And then let me also indicate that climate change is also affecting the animals that we are rearing. And sometimes you go to your farm and then all the birds, the chicken, you see that the broiler birds are dead because of the heat stress. You enter your piggery where you have the pigs, you go, some of them are dead because they cannot withstand what? The heat. So the advice we are saying here is that we are encouraging these farmers to consider using animal breeds that are more resilient to heat stress. And that is why we have biotechnologies. That is what biotechnologies do. They sit in the lab and then they are able to develop some of these breeds that are able to withstand some of these climate events. And then we also have what we call the use of climate information services to plan farm activities. So for this one, the government needs to come in to be able to develop our meteorological stations with technologies so that these stations will be able to inform farmers, give farmers information about farmers need information. I have personally done some research about the impact of use of climate information services, which I will show you later, on the livelihood of the farmers. So information is very, very important because if farmers are privy to what is likely going to happen, they will know how to plan beforehand so that at the end of the day, it will not catch them by surprise. And then the use of a renewable energy source. I was talking about irrigation at the beginning. That irrigation is very, very important. But some of these irrigation equipments use pumps. They use water pumps. And these water pumps in most cases, use petrol. So what we are saying is that in these pumps, instead of using petrol, let's use a renewable energy like biogas and solar energy and what have you. So this is what we can tell, this is what our farmers can do. But we are not only talking about farmers. So I was talking about it is also very important for government to invest, as I told you not long ago, to invest in early warning systems. Sometimes we become affected by the effects of climate change because we are not aware. So alerting farmers and communities about floods or droughts early enough is very, very important. So if we are getting information from our meteorological station that tomorrow is going to rain heavily, everybody is going to prepare. But sometimes nobody hears anything about it. Nobody gets any information about it. The time you realize it is raining heavily, and sometimes so many lives are lost. Is it possible that we can develop some apps which we can put on our phone to give us some alerts as to what is likely going to happen? Let us know whether the temperature is going to be very high, maybe in the following month or the months to come. That is very, very important. Let me indicate that an ambitious early warnings for all African plan for Africa was launched in September 2023. The primary objective is to make sure that timely and accurate information about natural hazards and impending disasters reaches all segments of African society, particularly the most vulnerable. So the African Union and then other regional bodies realize that
Doctor, we've lost you again. Okay, as we are almost concluding, let's wait for Dr. Wongnaa to join. And also, maybe we can turn on our video so that you can take a picture that we'll be posting on our blogs. I can kindly turn on your videos and so that you can take a screenshot. It will take around, let's take around 1 minute. Nice. Yeah, this is, if you are comfortable having a picture on the blog, you can turn on your video. Yeah, I see a couple of you have turned on their videos. Yeah, let me take this picture. I think that's okay. Mhm. Yeah, I think that's okay. Let's continue. Hoping
Alright.
everyone is able to access the modules and everything.
All right.
You can raise. Okay.
Sorry, my network got disturbed.
Okay.
So the point we are making here is that it's important that we invest in early warning systems to be able to ensure that people will have information. In fact, even the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres keeps stressing that it's important that by the year 2027, it's important that countries are able to put strategies in place to ensure that everybody has access to information with regards to what is likely going to happen so that they can always plan, beforehand. One other thing we can also do is to consider what we can do to be able to put up very strong buildings. So whether you like it or not, we continue to be affected by climate change. So the best you can do is that if you are designing your building, you will need to make sure that at the end of the day, it's going to be a very strong building in such a way that it will be able to withstand some of the strong winds that climate change is presenting to us. So normally to be able to build resilience against build a very strong resilient infrastructure. One of the first things we can do is for you to be able to understand what the climate hazards are. So after you've known what the hazards are, basically it's likely going to be the floods, the droughts, the storms, the heat waves that we continue to experience. And having gotten information about it, then we should also find out about which areas, which communities, or which ecosystems are likely going to be affected by some of these, so that we'll be able to take or proffer solutions as to what can be done to be able to address this situation. So basically, we have been talking about mitigation, and basically mitigation from the discussion that we are having, the interaction we are having this afternoon. You realize that mitigation is all about, it's more or less a preventive measure. It's more or less a preventive measure that is talking about how to stop future problems. What can we do so that at the end of the day, climate change doesn't happen at all? That is mitigation. And adaptation deals with the current problems. Adaptation acknowledges the fact that, yes, there is climate change, and this is what we can do to still be able to live with it. So that is that. Together, if you put mitigation and adaptation together, they build what we call resilience. Together, the two of them build what we call resilience. And when we talk about resilience, we are talking about the ability to bounce back from climate shocks. Whether we like it or not, climate change is here with us. So what we can be thinking about here is how to build what? Resilience. How can we bounce back to be able to continue doing what we are trying to do? So an example I'm telling you here, like a farmer planting trees. If a farmer is planting trees, it's a mitigation measure. And then if somebody is planting drought-resistant varieties, then it is an adaptation measure. Because planting the drought-resistant varieties will ensure that at the end of the day, you can be guaranteed of your yield. So all these, whether adaptation, mitigation, coming together to give you resilience, are very important for sustainable development. But for you guys and ladies from across the African continent, from wherever it is that you are connecting from, how can you also contribute to this mitigation and adaptation agenda? Because you are the future leaders. And that is why we think that if we are able to put these things in you, going forward, Africa is not going to have a problem. Wherever it is that you are going to work, whatever it is that you are going to live, whatever it is that is going to come your way, you will know how to also contribute to this mitigation and adaptation agenda. So one of the things you can do is to plant trees in your schools, in your communities, in your universities. You understand that? Can you form some associations aimed at, planting trees in your schools? You should also work towards saving energy. I've already talked about this. When you know you don't need a light, please switch it off. If you don't switch it off and you allow it to be there and it's not being used, if you are using it, fine. But when it is not being used, switch off the lights, switch off the air conditioner, switch off the electrical appliance, because they contribute to emitting greenhouse gases. So as I told you, you can start or join a recycling program on campus. If you are fortunate and then in your university, there is an environmental association that is into recycling of plastics or other waste, can you join them, having participated in this particular lecture or this particular program? Can you join them? Find a way of educating others about climate change. And there are so many ways you can do this kind of educations. At the in the church, in the mosques, wherever you find yourself, even on the social media, TikTok, wherever is it that you find yourself, on Facebook, on Twitter, Snapchat, and all the social media, YouTube. Can you develop some videos to educate people? You understand that? And then we also talk about innovation, coming out with some simple technologies. These days, we talk about eco bricks. There are certain bricks, instead of using the normal cement and the rest. Remember that this cement is produced from a factory that is using fossil fuel. Is it possible we can produce blocks or bricks? That is what we call eco bricks. I will show you some pictures shortly. And then we also talk about advocating for policies, engaging in student movements, and what have you. So take note of this. But let's look at the challenges that Africa is facing. We are talking about climate change. Climate change is here with us. But here in Africa, we have a problem that we have to find a way of addressing. What are some of the challenges that as Africans we are facing? The first one has to do with lack of funds for big projects. Climate change, mitigation, and adaptation is very, very expensive. And let me indicate that the cost of climate change for Africans is estimated to be between the range of 30 to 50 billion US dollars annually. And the question is, where are we getting this money from? This is a report from the World Meteorological Organization on the state of climate in Africa. This report is very, very recent, just in 2023. Every year, it's estimated that African countries throughout Africa is expected to spend some 30 to 50 billion US dollars annually just for climate change mitigation and adaptation. So the question is, where are we going to get the money from? That is a challenge. The other one has to do with the limited use of technologies. I was talking about the early warning systems. The question is, do we have them as Africans? We need a lot of money to be able to equip our meteorological services departments in such a way that they are able to give us real-time weather information. Then we talk about climate injustice. You see, the point is that Africa pollutes less but suffers more. Why do we say we are polluting less? We are polluting less because we don't have all the big factories in Africa. All the big factories that are generating the gases into the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere are not in Africa. So we pollute less. But geographically, we are always very much affected. And that is what we call, generally, we contribute to just about 4% of global greenhouse emissions. And yet, we are at a disadvantaged end. Why are we saying that we are at a disadvantaged end? You come to Africa and over 60 to 70% of the population are farmers. So if they are farmers, a lot of us are employed in the agricultural sector. And if our agriculture is climate dependent, then you can know how it is hitting us hard here in Africa. Our economies depends on what? Climate change. So this is what we call climate injustice. We pollute less, and yet we suffer more. I'm gradually bringing my lecture to a close. That notwithstanding, even though climate change is here, the question is, does it also present some opportunities for us here in Africa? Yes. The first one is green jobs. We were talking about, I didn't even say it. Some of you were the people who started it, that we can invest in electrical, what do you call it, renewable energy, like solar panels and the rest. So if a lot of people are going into renewable energy, like the use of the solar panels, the wind energy and the rest, then it means that we will need so many solar panel installation technicians. We will need a lot of wind turbine technicians. We will need a lot of renewable energy technicians. We will need a lot of bioenergy specialists. And that tells you that climate change also presents what? Opportunities. Just like entrepreneurs always behave. For entrepreneurs don't see what? They don't see challenges. Whereas others are complaining, they see what? Opportunities. So that is one. The other one has to do with the fact that, of course, I was talking about the fact that where are we going to get the money to be able to, carry out this mitigation and adaptation agenda. There is a lot of money with some international organizations. Some international organizations have specialized in giving money aimed at alleviating poverty. So if you are doing any project with climate change in mind, any project that is aimed at climate change adaptation and mitigation, some donor organizations would want to finance that. An example is what we call, we have the Green Climate Fund. You can be thinking about it. Who knows, maybe tomorrow you may have a project that you may want them to fund. So that is that. So personally, as an individual, normally in our universities, we don't only do teaching. A very important thing that we as lecturers are supposed to do, and also to train you students to do, is to do research. And that is the reason why in this Acclimatis program, we are not only giving you the lectures, we are not only giving you the slides, we are not only giving you the videos, we also want you to do some research, embark on some projects. So I have personally done some studies on climate change. I think the first one I did was a paper that was published, I think in 2022. It was published in Technology in Society. And the topic is building resilience to shocks of climate change in Ghana's cocoa production and its effect on productivity and incomes. In fact, some of the things that I talked about in this particular lecture are actually from the findings from this particular work. I just want you to appreciate why we want you to do this particular project and why you need to take it seriously. If you take it seriously, in the end, you may even want to publish it in a journal like this. You can download this paper online at your own convenience. The second one I did, which was also published, I think that was sometime last year. That was a systematic literature review of climate change adaptation strategies and policy development in West Africa. This was not a research article. It was a systematic literature review, which was some kind of a desk study. You can also find this paper online. I'm sure, as always, the video will be shared with you, and then you can trace how you can get hold of this. And the most recent one, which I also did, has to do with the impact of use of climate information services on smallholder welfare. This one, I did it with some of my students here at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. And this paper actually came out of an undergraduate work, undergraduate students like you. So, and that is why I am challenging you, empowering you, and then motivating you to take whatever it is that we are doing seriously. So in summary, what am I saying? Let me indicate, or let me reiterate the fact that climate change is real and it affects all of us. Everybody is affected by climate change because we are experiencing the floods. The place is becoming warmer and warmer. The rains are not coming the time we expect them. And when they are coming too, they come with storms. So climate change affects all of us. And I also want to let you understand that mitigation and adaptation are both what needed. They are very, very important. So as African students from wherever is it that you are connecting from, you have a big role to play in building a sustainable world future. And when we talk about building a sustainable future, we are talking about using the resources that we are using today. Make sure we benefit from it, but in such a way that it doesn't affect the ability of generations to come to also be able to use them. And that is why we need to protect our continent. We need to protect our continent. Otherwise, generations to come cannot live in this continent. So the final thought I want to leave with you this afternoon is, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. And the summary of this is that whatever it is that you are doing, we should be thinking about sustainability. We should be thinking about generations unborn. We should, and that is why we need to be very careful about our activities. Otherwise, your grandchildren to come in the years to come will struggle to live in this world. And that is why we need to protect it. So we don't have much time. So I think we've already gone past the time, about 60 minutes past the time. So let me use this opportunity. The question you see on the slide is for you. Just think about what are you currently doing on your campus to help build climate resilience. If you haven't started it, maybe let me pick one thought from some few thoughts from you, Stacy, before we draw the curtains down.
So hello guys, once again. So
All right.
thank you so much for the presentation. It was very insightful. So there's another effect that I thought of, that the climate change, like the demise of butterflies. I don't know if it's only me who don't see butterflies nowadays, but I really don't remember the last time I saw butterflies. So I really think climate change also, it has impacted the presence of butterflies. And you know, it's the beauty of the gardens, the environment. So we really need to work on the climate to bring back our butterflies, because they're also pollinators. They ensure plant reproduction. And then for the students in KNUST University, there is this program known as SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. So you really should opt to joining the club. Tomorrow we'll be going for a river cleanup and a CSR. So in case of any information, I'll inform those who are around KNUST University for the same. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you so much, Stacy. Maybe let me pick the last one because of time, from Margaret. So Margaret, let me pick the last one. Margaret. Looks like so many people want to share their opinion. Margaret, can we hear you? Oh, we can't hear Margaret. Margaret, we can't hear you. All right, let's pick Opu. Is it Opu? Oop. Opu.
Yes, good afternoon, sir. What we are doing on our campus project like currently in Oyoye, we planting trees like to increase
Get close to the microphone. It looks we cannot hear you well.
environment, especially on our campus.
All right. It looks like so. Okay, let's end it there. So let me use this opportunity to thank all of you from connecting from your respective universities and then ensuring that you are part of today's lecture. I want to encourage you to participate in subsequent lectures. I believe that you have not regretted participating in all the lectures that you have had so far. And then keep visiting the website to update yourself with whatever is it that you are supposed to do. Be checking your emails and then make sure that as and when you receive any email from the Secretariat, please read the email well, read the content well, and then do exactly what the email has asked you to do. You are going to be receiving a number of emails. So as soon as you receive one, it's important you respond to it and then take it from there. So thank you so much, the organizers, for giving me the opportunity to lead today's lecture. Enjoy the rest of the day. So I'm sure the organizers will have a word or two before we say goodbye.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Camillus Wongnaa, for your time in the insightful session. We have learned a lot from understanding what is climate, why should Africans care, what is mitigation, adaptation, opportunities for Africa, the importance of research, and the call to action. Our next guest lecture will be on innovation for impact on 3rd April. Continue learning through the Acclimatize platform. Yeah, and thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye for now.